All right. This is Science to Sorcery, the podcast where we explore the overlap between science and spirituality in my life and my guests' lives. I'm Jake Marco. I am a ritual master and life activation practitioner in the Modern Mystery School. I have with me my friend Rob Ciotti, who I've known for about 8 years. We met back in engineering school. Rob currently works in green energy, doing project management and engineering work. Rob, welcome.
Pleasure to be here, Jake. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I mean, it's such a for anyone listening, Rob and I, we've known each other for a while. We've been friends for a good time, and having grown up sort of into our adulthood together, um, I thought Rob would be a great person, that you'd be a great person to talk to because of your background. I know one thing we had talked about before, we thought would be a good jumping off point was your exploration being someone who was first started off your career wanting to be an Imagineer, so creating. Actually, can you explain to everyone what that even means?
Certainly, yeah, it's a goofy word for people that aren't huge Disney heads, but yeah, Imagineering is the name given by the Disney company to their engineering teams, their research and development. There's a bunch of different subsects as you'll find with any engineering profession, but that's the fun name that the Walt Disney Company gives to their engineering team.
I think one of the fun things. So, right, look, part of why I had asked you on, Rob, and we talked about this earlier, was that you come from very engineering like background educationally, but you also have a some spiritual background. You were raised religious, um, and you still are. You said, so I guess if you want to like talk a little bit about that background as well and sort of what that was like, and then sort of touching a little bit on the question of like how your background led you into this choice of deciding you wanted to study engineering to help build Disney World or Disneyland.
Yeah, certainly. So for a bit of a for a bit of a background, I like you said, we met each other at WPI. That's where I got my degrees in. I studied mechanical engineering and civil engineering. Um, I am now working in corporate engineering for definitely in the worlds of engineering, project management, accounting. And my more spiritual background is I've been raised as a Christian my entire life. I was baptized Catholic. I took communion as a Methodist. I now go to a Presbyterian church. I include all those to kind of say that I've clearly jumped around from the subsects of Christianity for a little while now. So um, I don't think I'm as strictly linear as a lot of practicing Christians, but overall, that's been a major part of my life for essentially since I can remember. My whole family's Christian, and I I think how that kind of plays into what we're talking about today. I mean, I won't get ahead of ourselves yet. We'll start simple, kind of with the with what coaxed me into engineering. And he mentioned Disney. And the funny thing about Disney is that that was essentially my first, I'll call it my first realistic dream job. Where after after you get over the fact that you might not be it might not be super feasible to try and be a professional baseball player or an astronaut. After that, it was being an Imagineer because uh, my family went to Disney a few times when I was a very young child, and sort of the atmosphere there was so, especially for a young child, it was so. I know it sounds corny, but magical. It really was. Um, Disney it does an incredible job at um, for lack of a better term, I'll say committing to the bit. And for for a child, it was really cool, but way back in the in the early 2000s, it was such a neat experience to be so immersed in what they try to make as sort of just an experience that really immerses you into the into whatever sort of theatrical scenery you're in at the time. And this was something even at a young age that I wanted to be a part of it. You know, obviously when I was a young child, I didn't really understand how any of it worked, but I knew that somebody had to be, behind this magic. Somebody had to be making it happen. And I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to be, the one that makes the magic happen. And as I got a little older, uh, it still was intriguing to me because, not only do I still think a lot of what they, a lot of the magic that they create is very engaging, but also I wanted to make that happen for other people too. It's a really neat experience that a child can have. And I get it's not selfless. I mean, tickets cost an arm and a leg, but, um,
Yeah, it's nice to get the employee discount.
yeah, exactly. Um, but it kind of adapted into more of a dual fascination of both. I want to both make this a magical experience for kids, and also to kind of engage that sort of practical of like, okay, how in a very scientific world do you create these sort of magical experiences for everybody. There's an interesting balance there to sort of use technology to create fantastical theatrical experiences for people. So I think that was an early kind of introduction for me, or kind of evolution to me, that got me into the fascination of engineering. That and Legos. I think we all liked Legos as a kid.
Yeah. I think it's interesting the idea you're touching on of like someone has to engineer the magic.
Yeah,
And
and
you're a little bit like, well, why can't that be me? Why can't I engineer the magic?
yeah, exactly. I did like at one point, you assume it's Mickey Mouse, and it is, but you know, he needs his little helpers too. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, that was kind of the obviously you don't understand it from from any sort of high level as a kid, but yeah, it was that itch of like this is coming from somewhere. I want to know where. I want to be part of it.
Mm. Now, why specifically, I guess, did you know that you wanted a very technical sort of role, and then you found this, that you loved this magic of Disney? Or was it truly that you saw this amazing thing and you wanted to be able to create it, and that's what's in, you wanted to like be able to create, and that's what inspired you to like look into, this technical field?
Yeah, I think more in line with the latter. I think my fascination kind of came from I think this is a really creative way to demonstrate, the sort of things that you can create from, these, things that are born out of these engineering fields and this usage of technology and stuff. I think Disney always tries to wow its audiences with with the demonstration of new, whether it be animatronics or theatrical pyrotechnics and other displays of interesting technical phenomenon. So it's it was just a very especially for the mind of a child, and and as I was getting older, I think it was a very absorbable way to be wowed by what science and engineering could produce.
Mm, yeah, it's like you need to, I mean, it's the wonder, right? You're captured by the
Mhm.
wonder, and part of that is like, I guess as a young age, you kind of saw this opportunity to be someone who can help create wonder in the world.
Yeah, yeah, I would say so, and I makes it sound like I'm very selfless. I'm sure, just getting to go to my favorite theme park would also be a perk, but yeah, it is just kind of being able to be a part of creating wonder and creating those spectacles, and hopefully positive experiences and memories for other kids like I did.
Yeah. Now, some of our I'd say most of our viewers here probably don't realize that at some point later in our college career, you got to actually experience a little bit of this, right?
I was lucky enough to, yeah. I got the experience to do a 6 month co-op with the Walt Disney Company, and it was truly the most. I was quite shocked actually that it did live up to expectations. I figured this was going to be a don't meet your heroes kind of experience where, it certainly seems cool, but don't peek behind the curtain because it's going to ruin it. But no, it gave me a much more a newfound appreciation for a lot of the things that the Walt Disney Parks and Resorts do in order to, create this whole magical facade. And you get to, be more immersed in how everything actually works. And I felt like it allowed me to view all these all these spectacles very differently, but not in a negative way, more of a technical and analytical side. Because as a lowly, 6 month intern, you're still not in touch with everything, all the different departments and how everything works and what the R&D people are working on and how they're going to debut it. It's all very above the shoulder stuff, but it scratches the itch of like, ooh, that's interesting. I should reach out to that team. I want to know how they did that. Um, and yeah, certainly, fantastic experience and really just made me even more curious as to how I can, continue a career in sort of bringing this kind of, visual spectacle, immersion, and all that sort of theater that comes with it.
Here's the hard-hitting question I have for you, Rob. I'm sorry, I didn't prep you for this question either. We didn't talk about this one earlier in our little pre-chat.
Uh-oh. I'm ready.
Um, so obviously now you don't work at Disney. That's not where your career went, in the last 4 years. How do you feel like this sort of core piece, because we talked a lot about purpose earlier on our little pre-chat, a lot about like the importance of spirituality and sort of helping you find that like you can live your purpose and what is that actually. And it sounds like with you, there's a bit of, you became an engineer to create more wonder. That's the one aspect of it. As much as your, hesitancy to appear altruistic is coming up there.
Yeah.
That it is a reality that it's something
Mhm.
that you wanted to do. How is that showing up now in your current work?
Yeah, so and that's a fair question. Graduating from school, my hope was to go back to Disney, and unfortunately, that was around COVID times, and a lot of the teams, including the one I was working for, were reduced to more of a skeleton crew for the foreseeable future. So it kind of became quickly evident that we're going to need to make a little career change, and I've worked for two utility companies since then, which is definitely a departure from, from from Disney. It's very different. And a lot of what I was talking about like, the visual spectacle and the theatrics, I would say is dialed back pretty significantly when you're when you're delivering, whether it be high voltage transmissions or gas, natural gas, chilled water, steam is really more what I do now. But it's more of a, you're not offering a visual spectacle, but you are still fulfilling a role. And the thing I like about the company I work for now is because we try and specialize in, in that green energy. We do district energy now. Um, and we try and offer, decarbonized steam, electrified steam and chilled water and stuff. And so to me, it's not the same thing as Disney, and it's not, you know, I won't sit here and say it's a magical experience when I go into work every day, but to me, it still feels like I am, trying to make a positive contribution to society. And again, to acknowledge the, altruism or lack thereof, we're still offering, decarbonize steam for profit. So it's we're not saving the world out of the goodness of our hearts, but it still allows, it allows me to feel positive about what I do and how we are, using technology for a positive purpose that hopefully will make eventually a positive impact on the world.
Yeah. I mean, it's like something has to get you going to, continue to show up back to work every day. I mean, besides, like you said, the paycheck is a very real thing. Like you gotta pay your
Yeah.
bills. Uh, but also there's a reason that you keep showing back up. Like you did choose, which kinds of jobs you were going to apply to as you moved forward. So like it sounds like there's something you're getting out of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny when I was in school, I would hear a lot of people, especially when I was an underclassman, and I would hear like the older classmen, the seniors, the grad students talking about like fulfillment. And you'd sometimes see surveys about like, mechanical engineers, rank fulfillment at their first job at, 3.5 out of 5 stars or something. And at the time, I always chuckled at that and said, I don't need to feel fulfilled. I just need a good paycheck and some, some room for upward mobility. I could care less about the fulfillment or feeling rewarded from my job. And very soon after entering the working world, I suddenly realized how much that does matter. Because it is hard to to go into a job where you don't care. And I did for a while. I love the job that I have now, but the first job that I had out of school, I was not as big of a fan of. And it is tough to roll out of bed every day and just say, I'll go do my work, write some letters, send some emails, cross some T's, dot some I's, and it's just you're just going through the motions at that point. So that was something coming out of school that I did not think would uh, be as big of a factor for me, not even close to as big of a factor as it is, and that was, the fulfillment and the feeling, the rewarding feeling of work. So that's something I'm grateful that I have now. But certainly did not have straight out of school.
Yeah. What's interesting is it sounds like you sort of needed to, and I mean, this is kind of an experience we often have, like I've had as well, but you go in thinking that you want one thing, and then you actually have the experiences in the world, and you're like, oh wait, no, that wasn't right. We
Yeah.
need to change direction here.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely had that as you've seen me in my, I've went all over the place with career from being a scientist to, you know, being a lecturer and, doing office management for a chiropractic office. And now I'm doing manufacturing, all of that with still doing like the energy work and healing. It's like
Yeah.
there's all sorts of different the interesting thing about life is that there's infinite paths you can take. And you can kind of only
Mhm.
take a few at a pretty much one at a time, but arguably a couple at a time.
Hmm. Yeah. They say to never make two major life changes at the same time. So I heard my coworker say that a week ago because one of my other coworkers just had a baby and is moving at the same time. So we'll we'll
Oh
take it
yeah.
one at a time.
Yeah, I've seen that I've seen lots of stuff like that. Yeah, getting a new job, moving, having a baby, start renting out your like basement apartment. For anyone
Mhm.
listening who did that for me, thank you very much. As I at one point had some friends who had their kid 2 days after I moved into their basement apartment, and that was
Oh my.
like wow. It was like kudos to you guys for the bravery on that one.
You got somebody to babysit, maybe.
Yeah. I wasn't very good at that, but I did dog sit.
There you go. There you go. That's easy. Dog is easier than baby.
Yeah, I've gotten better, being an uncle now and having that experience, but it's
Yeah.
not easy. For any
No.
parents out there listening, I acknowledge it's not easy, and I don't even really get it yet.
Nor do I. Nor do I. Give me a few more years. We'll see.
Yeah. But I mean, talking about creating wonder, right?
Oh, that's the greatest wonder one can create.
Yeah. And it brings me all this discussion about like creating the wonder, being the engineer. It does bring in this discussion of like, or this topic around like God and where does that sort of inspiration or spirit or I mean people have lots of different ideas about what is God, what is spirit, but at the end of the day, we're talking about some sort of divinity that a lot of people try to access in their lives.
Mhm.
What does that play like with you in this whole pursuit of purpose, pursuit of fulfillment?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It's a very I'm sure it's a question that has a million different answers if you give me long enough. But I think kind of what the purpose, the role that spirituality, and for me, obviously, that's a large part of that is my religious beliefs. It kind of serves the role as just an anchor to remind me of what my core beliefs are, and at the end of the day, what we're all working towards. At the end of the day, I do just want to make a positive impact on others, and make sure I pave the way to I make decisions now that will set me up to have a good family and a stable family, be able to support any children I might be lucky enough to have, and just take care of others, be a contributing member of society, and just leave an overall positive legacy on the world. Because it's I have religion for that because I think over the hustle and bustle of life does get to you, and sometimes I find myself at work so frustrated over menial things, or you know, getting raises or not getting raises, promotions, not getting promotions, all sorts of different, projects going well or not well, and and other menial stuff. There's a thousand things that can, bottle up your mind in life, and I like having spirituality, and again, in my case, that a lot of that is religion to just kind of ground me and remind me that, like, look, at the end of the day, there are bigger things than this. There are, forces bigger than this, and I need to take a step back, calm down, have faith that everything's going to work out okay, everything's going to happen the way it needs to be, and we'll continue living, I'll live my life in the way that I think is in line with those beliefs, and I hope everyone else does the same with their beliefs.
Mm. It reminds me of something like I've learned in the mystery school from one of my teachers, Sovereign Epsissimus Dave, and he talks a lot about, with fulfillment and joy in your life, like this sort of consistency of like being able to weather the storm, basically. And
Mhm.
no matter what happens, you go through highs and lows. Like that's going to happen, right? Sometimes you get the raise, sometimes you don't get the raise, sometimes you get laid off, sometimes, you get a free pretzel at the local Auntie Anne's. You had no idea that it was free pretzel day. And
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, if you have this fulfillment, right? This is at least what I've been learning in my own spiritual path and an experience as well. It's like you can weather the storm.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think it's a lot of spiritualities and faiths I feel like have a way of humbling you, and I
Mm.
think for the most part that's a good thing. Um, because I think I do need that at times to just kind of, I get so caught up in my own life and my own image and, social status and what have you, petty things like that. And I do sometimes need a reminder of just like, look, these are not as big as I think they are. These are these are small in the grand scheme of things, and I think everyone I think everyone can benefit from having a sort of positive anchor in their life, no matter, what vehicle that comes through. To just remind them, at the end of the day, it's not always about, how much money you make, or, whether everybody showed up to your Christmas party or whatever. It's there's bigger things, but it's easy to forget them sometimes. So I think it's very positive to have something like that in your life.
Oh yeah. And it's funny, you remind me of something that actually speaking back about my friend who had his kid when we were when I was living in his place for a little bit.
Mazel
And
tov.
and yeah, I think she he was telling me how when he would go home, like he there were things that he used to get really stressed out about with work and with his company. He was a business owner, or is a business owner, and that there were things that he used to think were important. And then he had his kid. And it's like he as soon as he walks in that front door and sees her face, it's like everything melts away. It's like none of that was important. It's like this
Yeah.
is what's important. Um, I think it's an interesting thing because it's kind of what we're talking about with, with spirituality, with divinity, with that connection to the higher power. And it's interesting that people talk about that, with kids. It seems like
Mhm.
at least in my view, like children, having children is like such a like
Mhm.
link to the divine. It's like such a
Yes.
like what's the word I'm looking for? Like an ultimate
Yeah.
service.
Mhm. Yeah, it's and I think a lot of different spiritualities and faiths look at it as sort of a, this young child here has kind of been given to you as a gift, and it's now, it's not so much your creation, it's been given to you and entrusted in you, and now it's sort of your responsibility to make sure that this little one gets put on the right track and is taken care of appropriately. And there's a tremendous amount of responsibilities that come with it, and I'm sure I am not, knowledgeable to name all of them at this time. Neither you or I have kids yet, but it's certainly, I would say, the biggest responsibility has yet to come down the pipeline for each of us.
It's I like the way that you put that of like this is a gift given unto you.
Mhm.
And like I think that really informs a certain way of approaching being a parent, of saying like, hey, this is not like you don't have ownership over this person, but you have a responsibility. Like
Mhm.
you own the responsibility of
Mhm.
taking care of this young person.
Mhm.
And I guess it's interesting when you say like that's something that you've gained from like your spiritual upbringing. I think that's something that's really valuable. Like to be a parent going, and I'm sure like you like there's plenty of paths, plenty of ways to get there, but if you can get to a place where you own the responsibility, the like, importance of taking care of this gift, I think it sets you up to be a pretty good parent.
Here's hoping.
Yeah,
That's a question for my future
yeah,
children.
yeah. We'll
Um,
touch base in like a decade, and we'll see how it's working out.
Good. We'll see. The Yeah. Well, it's funny. You highlighted that link to, with children and spirituality, and I feel like the subject of humility that we were just talking about as well manifests itself in children at all. I remember my father actually told me, because he sounds like your quintessential young parent who's, just trying to live his life, and, ultimately has a kid, but he's not, super, knowledgeable of what parenting is going to entail yet. But there is going to be a little person, hanging around the house for the foreseeable future. And I remember he said that he didn't understand a lot of it until the day that I was born. I was the first, his first child, and he said, like, "Oh my God, I I would give up my life for this little person. Like, I get it now. I never really did before, but I do now." And and it's interesting that just these, again, these smaller humans that, join us in our houses at some point in life that have that effect on us. Um, but it is just, again, along with many other responsibilities that we have, it's these babies have a way of humbling us.
Yeah, it's just another similarity with the importance of that connection to something bigger.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like this.
They I the you know I we all my family says they're gifts from God, and I'm sure people of any other spiritual faith have their own name for it, but they're blessings in one way or another. Um, it's it's a major life change. I'm trying to find a way to link it back to science. I don't want to stray too far away from the dichotomy of it all.
Oh, no. I think at the end of the day, the undercurrent is all there, right? And it's
Mhm.
probably a good place to start wrapping this together. So if I'll take on the onus of tying a little bow around it. I think what's at the end of the day, right, we're talking about purpose. I think to me, like that's the whole point of this podcast was I was in a place where I was very scientific and I didn't have a specific piece of my life dedicated to living with purpose. And to me, spirituality was what brought that to me, that brought that balance. Um, and so I think we touched on a lot of really good pieces of purpose and fulfillment in this episode. So I think great job, Rob. 10 out of 10.
Thank you kindly. 10 out of 10 yourself. We've
Yeah.
it's yeah, I mean fulfillment is and purpose is it's funny. It when we're talking abstractly, it seems so obvious of something to strive for in life, but we do get caught up in, the rigors of life, and we do sometimes forget what we're all striving towards. It's funny, Jake. You told me something probably a couple of years ago at this point, and I don't know if you realized its significance at the time, but I still think about it very often to this day. And that is people forget that they're in control of their own life. And I think about that often because as silly as it sounds, it is true that people get bogged down with any number of excuses, and they're all valid. What with long hours at the job, crushing bills, unexpected life events, car accident, what have you. And sometimes it's difficult to sit back and realize I don't feel very fulfilled with what I'm doing right now. I don't feel like I'm fulfilling a purpose. And again, as much as that might seem obvious to when we're talking so abstractly right now, it is something that is easy to lose sight of.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm glad that meant something to you. And for everyone listening, I hope if that resonates with you or anything else that we've said here, please feel free to connect. Leave a comment. I have my website on YouTube. If you're listening somewhere else, you can work your way over to the website as well. You can go to jakemarco.com and then you can connect with me, and just chat about all these little pieces and have more little nuggets around. Thank you for reminding me. I don't even remember saying that, but you are in charge of your life.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad I brought it up. I thought it was very profound.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here, Rob. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you all, and thank you, Jake. This has been a lot of fun.